Hello everybody, my name is Corey Woodruff. Today I'm going to be briefly discussing with you Hyper-V. So what is Hyper-V? Hyper-V lets you run multiple operating systems as virtual machines on Windows platforms. Hyper-V specifically provides hardware virtualization. That means each virtual machine runs on virtual hardware. Hyper-V lets you create virtual hard drives, virtual switches, and a number of other virtual devices, all of which can be added to virtual machines. So now that we know kind of what Hyper-V is, let's talk about some reasons to use Hyper-V. One reason might be, say you want to run software that requires older versions of Windows or non-Windows supporting operating systems. Well, you can do that with Hyper-V. Say you have an old game that you love to play. Well, you can simply just load up that old operating system. Say that game came out when Windows 7 was the top operating system. Well, you can just load up a Windows 7 virtual machine and then install that game onto that virtual machine, and then bingo, there you go, you can play it. Another reason might be experimenting with different operating systems. So there's a lot of different operating systems out there. It's not just Windows. There's Linux. There's Windows Server operating systems. Hyper-V makes it very easy to create and remove these different operating systems and virtual machines. Another reason might be test software. Say you want to test software on multiple operating systems using virtual machines. With Hyper-V, you can run them all on a single desktop. So you could have 3 or 4 computers running on your laptop. These virtual machines, they can be exported and then imported into any other Hyper-V stream, including the cloud-based Azure. So now that we know kind of some reasons why you might use Hyper-V, what are some requirements so the average person can use Hyper-V? Hyper-V is available on 64-bit versions of Windows 10 Pro, Enterprise, and Education. It is not available on Windows Home Edition. This is important to note because if you want to have access to Hyper-V and you have Windows 10 Home, you're going to have to upgrade to at least Windows 10 Pro. I can't remember the exact price. I want to say it was like $100, but you can pay that and then do the upgrade, and the upgrade's seemingly flawless. I mean, you don't even really notice a difference. The main thing, it just gives you a couple more options that you didn't have before on the Windows 10 Home Edition. One being included Hyper-V. Some of the operating systems that you can run on Hyper-V would be, the multiple Windows platforms, so Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, 7, Vista. One important thing to note about those, though, is you need a product key, but I'll get back to that in a second because there's a couple workarounds. Windows Server platforms, 2012, 2016, 2019, they can all be run on Hyper-V. Linux operating systems, CentOS, Red Hat, Ubuntu, Mint, Oracle, those can all be run on Hyper-V. Back to what I was saying before, so for the Windows platforms, you must buy the product key. Now there's a couple workarounds for this. Say you're in school like I am. Talk to your instructors. They have access to ISO images that you guys will be training on. So talk to them and see if, maybe they can work something out to where they may give you one or something so you can, train it because you're using it for training purposes. So I wouldn't see a reason why they wouldn't. Also, if you work in like a large network enterprise or a large, company and you're running virtual machines, well, your company's paid for those keys already. They also have ISO images, I'm sure. So I haven't ever heard of a company not letting you use them, but of course that depends on where you work, but I wouldn't see a reason why they wouldn't be able to give you those, especially if you're using it for training, because overall it helps, it helps the company and everything else. So as far as Linux operating systems goes, they're all open source. So you can get online and download any Linux operating system you want, free of charge. And it'll give you the ISO image, and boom, stick it into Hyper-V, and then there you go. You got yourself a Linux operating system. Some limitations to like host-based limitations might be that programs that depend on specific hardware will not work well on a virtual machine. Say you have a program that needs a lot of processing power and it uses GPUs to do so. Well, chances are if it needs that much processing power, your computer itself may not even be able to do that unless you want to, buy a real expensive machine. But you'll run into issues like that to where if it requires a lot of processing power, then it may not work as well, or it may lag or may not work at all. So you just kind of have to look into the resources that is used for that program. Also, applications relying on sub 10 millisecond timers like music mixing applications and stuff like that tend to have a little bit of effect because there's a latency effect when you run a virtual machine. And the only way I can explain it is it's not real bad, but you do notice it whenever you have a virtual machine up and running. So in my experience, what I use Hyper-V for, I'm in school right now, and I can tell you without a doubt it's one of the best training resources that you can have. Because like we mentioned before, you can load all these operating systems on the virtual machines, so this enables you to practice on those operating systems and mess around with them and learn them, Windows Server, Windows systems and the Linux. Say eventually you want to go to Linux as your main operating system, you can learn on Hyper-V, build a Hyper-V machine or a virtual machine and learn on that. To me, that is like an invaluable resource. So we briefly discussed what Hyper-V is. What are some reasons to use it? Maybe you, like we said, you want to run old software, stuff like that. Experiment with other operating systems. We went over some requirements for Hyper-V, what Windows version you need, and then what operating systems can run on Hyper-V virtual machines. We also discussed there might be some limitations if you have programs that are really in demand for high processing power. You might run into some problems there where it does not run smooth. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.